this episode of the Omega Podcast, we have the co-founder of AI Squared sharing with our founder on AI development, risk and compliance management, agentic solutions, and much more. Digitized for excellence.
Welcome to the Omega Podcast with Alvin McClerkin, co-founder and business development and partnership lead at AI Squared. It is such a pleasure to have you on the Omega Podcast.
It's a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me, Keenan.
Absolutely. Well, I know our listeners are reinvigorated to learn more about AI Squared and about your professional development. But to kick things off in our conversation, what is AI Squared?
So essentially, AI Squared is a software platform. We really are focused on the integration of just connecting sources to destinations of whether that's AI insights or data movement into any third party application, whether it be Salesforce, Workday, Tableau, anywhere where you just need to make a decision quickly within that, within your business and your workday, but without having to context switch, go to have 5-6 different tabs open for different applications, just really connecting the data science teams to the actual end users in a user-friendly way.
That is fantastic. And it seems as though AI Squared has really revealed a lot of opportunities and integrations within these tech companies. What opportunities does AI Squared present to tech companies like Microsoft and Amazon?
So really, I mean, it's multifold. Really, like for the big players like Microsoft, Amazon, they have marketplaces there, So also like your Databricks, they have their own marketplace. But a lot of companies host and they build their models and their AI models on Azure or on the Sage makers of AWS or in Databricks, Jupyter notebooks and different things. So really, what we bring for those companies is that because we are an integration platform, people can build their models there and host them, and we can connect to that source, and we can actually display the results of those models in a customized, user-friendly way into the business application. So for Amazon, Microsoft, Databricks, they like us because we're driving usage and consumption of those models. So they're getting the DBUs, and the companies are using Azure credits and AWS credits by running those models constantly, because now it's easy to use, it's easy to get access to them. It becomes sticky in a sense. So that's for the major players. And then just from like the SMB standpoint, we're allowing them to not have to have that heavy uptick of building out these large engineering teams to build such capabilities and building out these large infrastructures where they can just use AI Squared. They can connect to a couple open source models, or, again, they may have Databricks or wherever they're Hugging Face or whatever, and they can just get that integration directly into their CRM tools specifically, or, just wherever without having to work directly with those actual third-party companies. It's a little twofold there, but essentially just kind of making life easier for for the workers and driving revenue for the big boys.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And I know it's something that a lot of companies actually are struggling with, is actually getting that type of talent within their organizations. Now, how do companies possess the necessary talent to deploy this technology? You had mentioned that you're kind of like the middleman in regards to helping to facilitate these integrations with these larger companies. But let's say you're looking at a mid-sized company that's looking to develop this internally, their own generative AI, or they're trying to get more of a technical team in-house develop. What advice would you probably give these types of corporations?
So what you normally see from like the smaller companies, there's a large effort to do what we're doing. I mean, even the bigger companies, like some of them, they can do it. It just it takes a long time. So
Right.
from just to integrate one machine learning model into, test and deploy, lead time, and all those different things, it'll take up, several months. Using AI Squared, it takes a matter of just a couple of days, if not same day. But that'd be for each individual model. With our platform, you can bring in unlimited models, make those connections, and then it's kind of like a plug and play. But the Microsoft, the Metas, the Amazons, the bigger companies, the Vanguards, the Bank of Americas, they have the resources and the data science teams in house to do that. The small, small and medium sized business, they don't really have that internal resource. So, so they, and then even still, if they did, if that's what they did, it still take time. And then in the small, small businesses, time is, I mean, everyone's time is money, but even more so for small businesses. So, AI Square kind of alleviates that piece for them, and also just kind of provides that level of insurance that they're able to deliver and on what they're building. So you had, doesn't matter if you have the best world class model, if it's sitting on the shelf or it's taking a year to get into production. By the time it is, that data or what it's trained on may already be stale, and then you have to go through that whole process again, and you kind of lose that AI adoption or stickiness from the people that need it or that's using it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think what you had touched upon kind of made me think more about the compliance that comes into play when these companies are adopting these generative AI models.
Mhm.
How are you, or within AI Squared, acquiring, overseeing these data utilization models for these generative AI tools that these companies are leveraging? Now, do you guys oversee something like that, or is it more so separate, or do you have something in regards to these larger corporations that are leveraging it that is their responsibility to leverage and to oversee these data utilizations to make sure these models are being used properly, or do you guys oversee that in any
Yes,
particular?
so we have a level of governance on our SaaS. I mean, of course, we have like the certain the compliance, like the SOC 2 compliance, and the different level of certifications per industry. Per state. California has a lot of different compliance laws that we abide by, and we have the certs for it too. But most of our customers are financial services in the federal space, health and life sciences. So those are highly regulated industry. So our product and platform is deployed on, in their VPC. So that risk and that compliance and governance kind of, it falls into their scope, their ecosystem, which is what they want anyway. That they want to be able to maintain, and they want to be able to govern that. So, but I mean, within our platform too, we do add an extra level of governance by role-based permissions. Just setting up who can see what. When you're doing testing and evaluations, you can set up different user groups to have access to certain models, and then the ability to scale out to all, or just however they want. But that kind of connects directly to their Active Directory. But long story short, most of our clients, it's a VPC deployment, so it's within their infrastructure, and so within their rights of governance or governing.
Perfect. So it's basically these companies, they're responsible for overseeing that within their own internal modules.
Yes, correct. Yeah, yeah. But we do have the ability from our SaaS offering. We do have the necessary compliance, and we do offer some governance tools for individuals if they want to just come click and download AI Squared. But majority of 90% of what we do has been governed by the individual companies that we work with.
Perfect. Now, on this topic of generative AI utilization, there's this issue when it comes to mid-cap companies breaking into this particular domain, whether it's fear of, not having the financial capital to invest into the technology, not having the people in place to monitor it. What challenges from a founder do you face when it comes to companies that are hesitant to leverage AI Squared due to change management? Do you have any advice for companies that are on the verge of leveraging these AI modules, or may have existing ones in their business but may not be leveraging them to the fullest? Can you speak to these individuals that are listening to our conversation?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of education to
Mm.
go on. I mean, just what to do, what not to do, trial by fire. So it's the space is rapidly growing. There's so much coming out every day. Open AI. It seems like every day you get or every week you get a new email or something. Imagine 3 has doing this. Okay, OpenAI has this new capability. They put the task ring. Then DeepSeek came and kind of shook up everything, and now So it's more of education of keeping up with and kind of like knowing what you don't know in a sense. But a lot of, I mean, getting familiar with like the open source technologies. I would say, just because you can from like a resource standpoint, if you don't have to build everything from scratch now, in a
Right.
sense. So that's one thing. Like there's so much open. I mean, I think Meta open source like 95% of all their models, and you got DeepSeek is open source and just as it's way cheaper and just as comparable to OpenAI's ChatGPT. So all these different tools are open source. So really, if anything, you want it in-house, it's kind of just bring someone in that understands, that open source landscape that you can leverage there, just to kind of minimize costs and a cost saving in that piece versus trying to build it on your own. No need to reinvent the wheel. You can essentially make a fork, if you're kind of familiar. But like cryptocurrency is real big in cryptocurrency. Make a fork of this, make a fork of that. It's essentially the same thing. But it then so yeah, I mean that'd be the biggest thing, especially from a resource standpoint. I think it was two parts. What's the other part of the question?
Yeah, no, the
Did I
other part of the
capture?
question was in regards to change management. What type of advice would you give these companies that are looking to leverage AI squared, but they might be hesitant?
Oh yeah, so I mean, I think really the hesitation there would really be the price point. So the company is really tailored for large enterprise companies. So when it may be a sticker shock, but in a sense. So, but from I think that's the biggest that what we've seen is the biggest hesitation. But we've worked with customers, small medium businesses. We've done kind of custom order forms in a sense to kind of leverage because really our platform is use case agnostic. So if you have a model or if you have models or we have the expertise in house to build models, but that's not like our business. That's not that's not what we do. We look to provide you a platform to leverage your already existing models that you have and to get the most ROI and benefit and justification for your AI spending. You spending 2, 3, 4 million or sometimes billions a year, like management is like, what are we getting out of this? While we have 1,000 models sitting on the shelf, we got 100 data scientists building these things and nobody's actually seeing any ROI. So AI squared really helps companies, the larger companies, do that. From a small medium, they don't have that many, but they don't have the necessary resources or ML ops developers to or whatever to push those models out in a timely fashion. So I would say just look at it as like an employee, almost like an agent in a sense. Agentic, is a real big buzzword nowadays. So our platform can really kind of circumvent or act as one of those, data engineer, ML ops, DevOps. It's a couple of different roles. So instead of looking at the price point of the actual platform, look at it as like you get an all-in-one type of agentic employee.
Yeah, no, that's definitely very important to keep in mind. And as we continue regarding these modules becoming better, sharper, more agentic, there's an issue when it comes to accountability, especially with some of these data infrastructures. What particular infrastructure do you guys have in place to improve accountability from your end or from maybe the customer end when it comes to them utilizing your platform?
So the biggest, well, I won't say the biggest, my favorite part of the platform is our feedback mechanism. So while you're connecting those sources to destinations and you're injecting and overlaying these AI insights or just moving data from back end to back end, you have all these things happening. At the same time, our platform Nate has a built-in feedback mechanism that allows the end user to directly speak to the data scientist. So so essentially just helping you kind of retrain, like auto tune on the fly some of these models or these agents that's out here in the workflow. So it kind of it keeps things in control or level based. Just so if this starts to kind of drift a little bit or kind of go off the rails, like, hey, this is not correct, or this is giving me this and it should be this, or this is totally not relevant. We're able to provide that in real time back to the data science team, so those adjustments can be made. So I think that's the biggest from our platform. That's the biggest safeguard there, in the sense of having like that human in the loop feedback.
Yeah, that consistent feedback loop
Yeah.
is so crucial. But to a certain degree, sometimes the feedback from customers at an early stage business may not always be helpful, especially if you're in this innovative space where you're looking to take risks. I mean, what type of advice would you give, a company that's looking to leverage the input from their clients or their customers, but it's not in regards to helping them regarding getting that bottom line? Do you understand what I mean? Like they're asking
Yeah,
for features that are not really going to help the business. I mean, obviously you've read some of the feedback, and some of it might not be as helpful. How do they kind of
yeah.
sort through it all?
No, so I mean, and another piece is within the platform, be able to set up like separate observational studies, so A/B tests. So you can, so for the same model, you could use it in different scenarios or use it for different audiences, and but so you can segment that feedback. So if you had four different segments, and that same model was running, you can see like, all right, let's see how closely related is the feedback that we're getting. Is it the same, or is one group a little more picky, or a little more just nonchalant, or just everything's great, just checking through, or is one like just really just giving some for lack of better words, BS feedback, just just to mess the system. You always got to watch out for the outliers. So I think being able to segment the feedback from a customer facing, like outward bound, but also internal testing as well. You can have your own set of SMEs that you trust, or that has the knowledge of what's going on, to actually know this is what the answer should look like. So you can internally set up those different tests, and instead of that A/B testing with those individuals before you push it out at scale. So I think that can help. That process right there can help minimize it. Of course, I think just the process of it being real time will help, because you can't, you're not going to be able to stop everything or capture everything. So as long as it's real time, to be able to see that feedback, I think that's where it really helps and comes into play for those situations where it's like, I don't really the garbage in, garbage out type aspects.
Enjoying your Omega podcast experience? We want to hear from you. Leave us a comment or visit our website at omegaconsulting.online for more insights, success stories, resources, and more. Digitized for excellence.
Yeah, no, because if you don't have those monitoring systems in place, you're basically going to get all this feedback, and some of it's going to be helpful, and a lot
Yeah.
of it isn't. And then you're going to be mistaking the bad feedback as the good feedback, and then that's going to end up impacting the product in the end.
Yeah, and I think that's important for the human in the loop, because some people say, well, you can just have an agent filter it out, but sometimes that agent needs to be trained too. It may be filtering out stuff that's actually relevant. It may be bad, but it may be a bad feedback, but it's good feedback. Say,
Mhm.
if someone's saying this isn't working, this isn't doing that, that, and that, you need to actually evaluate whether or not that's true or not. So that human in the loop, really think it's almost like a double QA, a double tester, and in a sense, I can say, well, though that would take time as well. So if it's all a work in progress, but I believe that keeping a human in the loop at this point, to go along, work alongside of the agents and the different AI that we have, is the most important thing right now, until AGI comes.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation. But just to pivot our conversation just a bit, I know with this new administration, the Trump administration specifically, there's a lot of new legal, regulatory, and ethical considerations that companies, especially AI companies, must be aware about when integrating generative AI. With the new administration taking office, has there been any consideration or ethical consideration specifically that you and your founders have had to discuss in order to make sure you guys are remaining compliant?
Not necessarily we discussed to make sure we remain compliant, because most of how we structured everything from a compliance standpoint was kind of universal, in a sense. It wasn't really built off of the AI initiatives or directives set by Biden or by any political party. It was, but since we do working on a lot of the federal space, our biggest impact is just having to wait and see, in a sense. So it's not necessarily the AI companies in a sense, unless you're bringing in models. You mean not bringing in GPUs and stuff from offshore. So we're not necessarily in the hardware space. So we don't have any impact in that, but it's more so on the client facing side in the federal government, because they don't know how some of the orders or the different directives or presidential mandates that's going to be coming down. So it kind of they're waiting to see for that because that's going to shape how they spend. They don't want to go down this long path of this, and then it comes out like, hey, you can't even use you can't use Chat GPT anymore, or you can't use generative AI anymore, or everything has to be self-hosted or custom built. So I think from that standpoint, that's the only impact we have, but not necessarily from like a compliance of how we do work or build our product.
That's great. And that's very important to keep in mind, especially as we continue to keep track of these new developments with how this new AI development team that the Trump administration is developing, how that might play in regards to some of these regulatory compliance that businesses, especially generative AI companies and such, will begin to have to be in alignment with. But in order for us to understand the future, there's so much technology, especially within the last 5 years with COVID-19 developing into these, chat GPTs, generative AI tools, to now we're in this focus of humanoids and how robotics is playing a very significant role. I mean, what particular emerging technologies do you feel as though are potential disruptors, or for instance, that are opportunities for businesses of all sizes?
I would say, I mean, of course, you have like, to me, the four major ones, of course, is agents, the agentic software workflows. You have the humanoid robotics. You have it's been around for a while, but also just with all the different things, the drones is a real big. And then, there late last year, there was a big surge on quantum computing. They had the whole, you've been seeing a lot of things. So I think those four are the biggest disruptors. But I think immediately, just because of how fast it's been going in development, the robots, the humanoid, like just the humanoid style robots, not just robotics in general, but like the humanoid where you have before we had vacuum cleaners and that was like our household appliances. Now we're actually going to have like a humanoid bot that's actually Jetson style, R2D2 style,
Yes,
like
yeah.
like in our house in the corner charge, and then it comes and it does those things. So I think that's evolving faster than I think a lot of people thought. Just, I mean, it's almost on, like, I seen something look like Westworld the other day that was like, yeah, it's like the robot had like biomechanics, like it was had filled off with water and it just different things. So it was almost like a clone but robotic. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. But I think that's like the biggest disruptor in the immediate future. As far as like a true disruption, like agentic is not, it is disruptive, but it's more so helpful. But I think it's disruptive in the sense of people are going to have to get used to seeing like robots like walking around or interact, coming into somebody's house and a robot opening the door and greeting you, just different things,
Yeah.
or being your server or host at a restaurant. Like, it's going to actually be like you living side by side with them. I think that's like the biggest disruption.
Oh, yeah. And that's a whole nother podcast to talk
Yeah,
about.
it is. And the thing, I think people are torn. Like, some people are like, yay, and some people are like, no, it's like,
Yeah.
but the snowball's already going downhill. So it's kind of, it's really, at this point, what do you do,
Yeah, that's very true. And I know as human beings, we also have to keep in mind that we still have to live, we
Yeah,
still have to put food on the table, as they say. So amidst robotics taking specific roles, there's also an opportunity. So what
yeah.
part of history are you going to be a part of is what I'm
I
trying to
mean,
get.
I think it's just part of the technological revolution. People, when the computers came on, people, it's like, look, you should read a book and not read a ebook. Then,
Right.
now the same people that's reading ebooks like, well, you always got your phone in your hand. But I can work from anywhere. But it's like, so now it's like, well, you got these humanoid robots that's doing this. It's like, no, it's gonna every evolution is like somebody screaming end of the world. So
Mm,
I mean, as time goes, somebody may be right if you say it enough, but at this point, I don't see it being as gloom and doom as a lot. But I mean, there is a lot of fear mongering going on out there around the space, in a sense.
mm. Well, you raised some incredible points. But on this note, I do want to make sure that we keep the conversation human. But the interesting part is many people who may be listening to our conversation may not know who you are, Alvin, as a leader. Can you sort of just speak briefly about, your background? How'd you come into developing AI modules and kind of getting involved in AI squared?
Yeah, so Alvin McClerkin, I'm essentially I moved around a lot. Not a military kid, just seems like every 10 years there's a motto I have now, you got to go to grow. So I guess that's kind of been so born in Detroit, Michigan, moved to Jacksonville, Florida around 10 or 11. Kind of essentially grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, did middle school, high school there, went to junior college for 2 years before going on to play football in Minnesota and Mississippi. Then, so majored in computer science. I actually grew up in Jacksonville, Florida with the CEO of AI Squared, who I helped, we co-founded the company together, Benjamin Harvey. So when we went to college, we both were playing football. We were just like, we're going to major in the hardest subject, because if football doesn't work, we at least be able to make a good living. And the hardest subject at Mississippi Valley State at the time was computer science. So
Awesome. Well, what do you want your legacy to be?
legacy, man. I think more so just the legacy that I want and just what I kind of instill in my kids, and I just tell anybody I'm mentoring, just get better every day. So really, I just want when people hear Alvin McClerkin, it's like and that guy did a little bit of everything, like he left no stone unturned, like he wasn't afraid of failure. He was always optimistic, almost to the point of delusional, in the sense of like he just believed that he could do it, even without the proper background or knowledge in a sense. But always been an aspect of fail fast or so just around that piece. I think failure has a bad connotation or a bad reputation in the world. A lot of people try to avoid it in a sense of whether it's fear of embarrassment or it's always generally tied to how people look at you. But in a sense, anybody that's done anything great, they had to do something that was really, really hard or do something that people didn't want to do. And there was a large or a high risk of failure, so they would have never been, who they are if they didn't, kind of just meet it face on. So that my legacy just be one that just kind of just took on failure, head on, win, lose or draw.
That's fantastic. Failure is something that you have to experience in order to be successful. And I don't think many people understand how crucial that is as part of being
No,
business
they don't.
owners.
Yeah, I mean, because we're naturally taught to be risk adverse. I mean, human by lot for survival, you have to be kind of risk adverse. So it kind of risk adverse kind of goes with, avoiding failure in a sense. So it's like a total reprogramming. It's not something easy. I mean, it wasn't always like that. It kind of had to be that way by default, just by how, background, how you've raised, to make it out of certain environments, you had to, you you had to just, just go in and do what you had to do and hope for the best. And that kind of evolved over the years by just like, hey man, just go after it, just let the world tell you no, don't tell yourself no.
Absolutely. This is great nuggets. Any final thoughts or remarks that you would like to share with our listeners?
Um, I think just overall, just we talked about like a lot of disruption and AI and just different things. I think overall, just embrace change in a sense. I mean, you don't have to conform your morals or who you are as a person, but just embrace the change because change is inevitable. So learn more about it, about whatever it is, instead of trying to fight it. You don't have to be an advocate of it, but at least learn it because it's here and it's here to stay. And again, don't be afraid to, try new things or don't be afraid to fail. Just go after it because essentially I wouldn't be talking to you today on this podcast, and I'm sure you wouldn't be talking to me, being the host and founder of Omega Podcast if you didn't just go out and just say, I'm about to just do this. Uh, I read I try to read a lot. Well, I try to listen a lot. Audiobooks are my friend. So busy. So, so, but I remember this one quote. It was like paralysis by analysis. You don't want to get stuck in paralysis by analysis. A lot of people get stuck in the planning phase and never get to it. So, just kind of get out of it. Just do it. You know, you fail fast and go after it. But I mean, it's essentially like what we close with. I think is the biggest thing I want people to get out of it. Because it's at the end of the day, it's bigger than tech. It's bigger than companies. It's bigger than, careers. People need people, we're all connected. So I just want, your success, other success it drives me, it helps me, and then hopefully my success helps somebody else. So it's a chain reaction. So on a people level, just one for that.
No, that's an incredible way to conclude our podcast. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Alvin, for being on the Omega podcast. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.